4, in popular demonstrations of art, fellowship, Freemasonry, and the like, we expend annually from $10,000 to $12,000. If we put forth a call for a national convention for the purposes of considering our wrongs and asserting our rights and adopting measures for our mutual elevation and the emancipation of our enslaved fellow countrymen, we shall bring together about 50. But if we call a grand celebration of art, fellowship, or Freemasonry, we shall assemble, as was the case a few days ago in New York, from 4 to 5,000. The expense to which alone would be from $17,000 to $20,000, a sum sufficient to maintain 4 or 5 efficient presses devoted to our elevation and improvement. We should not say this of art, fellowship, or Freemasonry, but it is swallowing up the best energies of many of our best men, contenting them with the glittering follies of artificial display, and is indisposing them to seek for solid and important realities. And that's when he goes on to say the enemies of us, of these black people know that, and they use it against them.
See how I felt about, because he even mentioned how he had opened his own, press to combat against that. I honestly was very conflicted on whether this was like a business move for him, because you're saying, oh, y'all are spending all this money for this other press, why not buy or support a black-owned one like mine? So I felt like that was a business move on his part, honestly.
And I also feel like he has to consider that it takes time for mentality to change. Like when you're being enslaved, people are telling you, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it's actually true, like they can't read, they can't write, they can't gather together and progress as a society. I mean, even the North, they made laws against that. And so when you've been held back for so long, it's just hard for a whole race of people, even the, Israelites in the Bible, I'm forgetting. When they were set free from Egypt, I mean, even they had a hard time developing their mentality to, just go with the times. They had a time, they were still stuck in this slave sort of mentality. And so I think even today, black people still have a mentality that needs to grow. And part of it is because they're looking at what is right now and not what could be, and I understand that. And so I think he also needs to take that into consideration, like slavery is still going on, and there are a lot of segregation in the North, and you just can't expect people to cut off all their change right away.
I wanted to answer your question that you asked earlier about was he wrong for saying those things? And honestly, I don't think he was necessarily wrong. However, like how you just mentioned, he could have put more ideas of how things can change, or how the Greek groups could use their positions to do things for the black community. I feel like it was more so well, if you're part of a Greek organization, you're kind of already failing the black community, but instead he could have said, well, if you're in a Greek organization, you can do these different things because you're already on the platform. That's kind of how I see it.
Just to have context, at the time that he wrote this, what were the Freemasons actually doing for black people? Because that raises a good question, because if you try to extend it to Greek organizations today, a lot of us are community service-based and have initiatives that are based off helping the black community. So you kind of have to see what the Freemasons were doing in comparison so that you can have a proper comparison, because to directly kind of just be like, oh, he wouldn't like, these organizations now. It just depends. Were the Freemasons actually helping black people, or were they just
But is he saying he doesn't
monitoring?
like those organizations? Is he saying he doesn't? You ask the question, should people be? Is that the question he's asking?
Well, I kind of took it as, is it like hindering the black community? I feel like in a way that's how he was addressing that situation. I feel like it was more so it not benefiting the black community, and it's not in a way helping, it's more so hindering. But like you said, a lot of these black organizations, DNI, they were created and established just so they can help the black community specifically.
Right, and I think we also have to ask, how much could they really do realistically at that time too?
Sure.
Because black people didn't have disposable income like that, just to, spend on everything that they wanted to, like we do now. Black people now, they go on vacations, they do all this and all that other kind of stuff, and we have the income to go to college, to join these don't think he was really thinking that, at least in my mind, I do see what you're saying is it can be one and the same. Like they can be in these fraternities, be influential in these organizations, and also know their community.
Let me hear from some of you out there, go ahead, then I hear from some of you out there.
I feel like you also have to look at like how much influence that they actually have, because it's just like, you just thinking, oh, they're in this, they're great, they're in it, but they could also just be another member, like, you don't know,
Yeah.
like, how much power they actually have, especially to be like, oh, well, let's go and help black people, like, they don't want to help us, so it's just like, you have to look at that too, and I feel like he was not looking at that, I think he was very, you know,
Let me hear from some of you. Okay, supported this.
Just the whole piece in itself, I agree, I feel like he was very narrow-minded at some points, like, he didn't look at a whole lot of different perspectives, it was kinda just this way and that's it. I feel like, just in that time period, like you all said, a lot of slaves, they can't, it's basically their life is at stake, you know, they can't do too much because they gotta realize, you know, oh, if I do this, this can bring, attention to me or my family or my wife or something like that. It's kind of like now, a lot of stuff is happening outside of your family, but you're kind of worried about your household first before you're going out and doing other things. Like, I don't think he was looking at that kind of perspective.
most slaves wouldn't even have access to this.
Yeah, so,
Okay, Ms. Bass.
And then just to piggyback off of what Bonnie was saying, during this time period, they're switching from a different mindset, like y'all were saying earlier. They're switching from being in a state of mind where I'm nothing but property to, okay, now I have to figure out how do I support myself and my family. The idea of getting other people out of it wasn't necessarily a mindset. But even then, is it really within other African Americans, is it their duty to take care of other African Americans? Because for example, how we were saying earlier this semester, just because I'm black doesn't mean I have to help you because you're black, right? So is it even the responsibility?
Well, how far does that responsibility go?
Exactly.
Well, this was before like slavery ended, like even the Civil War, so it wasn't like, oh, we're trying to help ourselves, like, get out of the situation, we're just still coping.
Can I throw in another part that I had heard, that's what I'm waiting to hear on? What I hear in here, and I do think he made some assumptions, but what I do hear, I don't hear him knocking necessarily these groups and organizations, but I think he's saying, you put more of your focus here than you should be here. And then he may be overlooking the whys of it, but I think that's what I hear him saying. And I'm gonna fast forward it, and please don't take this wrong way, but I have been at this school for many years, and I have known, trying to make that same point, I have known students to pay thousands of dollars to be in the sororities and not pay their school things. Do you see the same parallel?
Well.
And so, but again, I understand, and we can talk about the mentality of African Americans, because let's be real, because he mentions in here, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, he says, we need to deal with the enemy, not just the enemy without, but the enemy within. And so this would be the enemy within, because let's be real, when blacks get money because of the mentality and where they come from, the pain, the whatever, want to have a piece of the American pie, we're into symbols. We're gonna have the latest this, and if we can't get it, we're gonna go get the knockoff brand. Y'all know that's right? So it's about projecting a certain image. So it'd be great to be in, you know, you just coming out, so now to be society. But he's saying, while you're doing all this society stuff, it needs to be more. And we're gonna find out, we still have these arguments today, because somebody, you were talking about the NAACP. Some people don't have good conceptions of those organizations, because in many quarters, they have become social, have become just that. You know, we got many chapters, not the NAACP, but a point, because the NAACP is just a word. It's the people who make up the NAACP. So we, the people, have to take responsibility. We talk about what the organizations are and what they are, but you have to look at the people. And so some people have written some scathing things about the NAACP, the Urban League. It doesn't have the passion and the fire, supposedly, that it had back then, because for some, it has become a societal thing. And so we, you know, we have to be in this club and that club and this club. We will spend money on symbols and not want to spend money on book. Is that correct? And so he's kind of coming from there. Again, he is making certain assumptions, maybe overlooking some things, but I don't think he's knocking them per se, but he's saying, we're giving all our attention to this. That's why he said, if we call this meeting, we come out in groves. But if we call something serious that's gonna elevate us, then nobody shows up. So, do you see that side of the argument?
Do you think fear would have a factor in people not showing up to the,
That
board?
could be,
Yeah, because, I mean, if it's just, you're meeting with other black people, camaraderie and stuff, but when it comes to, oh, we're trying to work on something or rebel or whatever, there is that chance you could get caught or something like that. So I feel like that might have been a reason, just the fear of,
and then you have to look at the separation too, that we kind of alluded to on Monday, between these free people and the slaves, okay? They all are about system, I'm not gonna say all, because I'm trying to correct that. But they don't wanna join hands with the other group. And so, and that's the question kind of alluded to what you were talking about. How much are you supposed to join hands? Today we talk about the black middle class, upper class, whatever, and what is their responsibility to the rest? I think there's a responsibility there, but how far does that responsibility go? That's even with just individual, you know, you can help people, but it does come to the question, are you doing something for yourself? And so, but we're gonna see some similarities here between he and Booker T, because they're all about self-help, and self-help sounds good. And pushing forward to our, some of the later groups we're gonna look at, and even right now, when you talk about self-help, it becomes kind of like bootstrapism. And so we're gonna talk about that too, but if you don't have any bootstraps or boots for that matter. So certain assumptions were here. But I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because he does make some interesting points. So some hands. Yes.
Oh, I was asking, did the blacks look down on the slaves?
Some of them did, most of them did. And that was, to me, that was part of the divide and conquer. And again, it's about that mentality. Even other groups that come to this country, the first thing they learn is about black people. They're at the bottom of the barrel. And so, of course, when I come in, I'm better than you. It at least distinguishes me from the lower echelons of society. And so to be black and to be free, definitely I'm not one of you. Even though in many instances you still are. Yeah.
I also have to relate it back to what I learned in psychology. I think a lot of times you have to focus on, people think about what they need more than what they want, especially when they do have a need, if they're hungry. Again, like a lot of free black people who are trying to make ends meet.
Talking about the hierarchy.
Yeah, the hierarchy.
Needs, yeah.
If they're unsafe and things of that nature, you're gonna worry about those things first more than this, oh, let's, be a doctor, let's be a lawyer, let's uplift the black community. If you can't uplift your own family and you're still trying to make ends meet, working how many hours a day to bring home food, if your children are working too, trying to, and not even getting an education, they can't get an education because they're hungry, they're trying to get food, then how much could you really support the black community? So you really, I think it goes back to what y'all were saying, like people are looking at their own needs before they are other people's needs.
But then the other part too about the needs is there, on that same phenomenon, that some people will spend things on material things and not get the food that they need, and their children need.
That's what I heard.
And again, it's coming from a mental place. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems in the community, 2018,
Kind of like you're trying to.
It's still there. So that it's coming from a certain psyche.
How do you break that?
It's kind of generational, really. Yeah, it's, see your family do it, you're gonna keep doing it. It's kind of like you have to stop.
The first part is like noticing the problem, and then I think that's problem is like just not spending at that point, you teach it to your children and children.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. My bad.
I was gonna comment on that. One thing I noticed about the black community in comparison to other communities, like we don't pass down things community, they have trust funds and they have savings and things. You'll inherit somebody's house, but in the black community, you'll inherit your parents' debt or something of that nature. So,
Somebody said in one of these pictures, they said a white man leaves a will and a black man leaves a bill.
that's true.
So that's kind of what
Ooh,
you're saying.
Yeah, it's basically what happens,
What?
and we're so invested
That's
in
crazy.
showing like, oh, we're so interested in showing like, proving we have the money by buying these like status symbols and stuff, instead of actually saving the money and investing in things that would actually make us more money. So we try to outwardly show, like flaunt what we have, even though we don't have it.
And that happened when I was a kid. I remember, I'm from Mississippi, that's as south as you get. And so I remember when the relatives and friends went up north, you know, that was supposed to be the promised land. They too made that distinction, and you would think they were living all of this, that, and the other. And when you went up there, you found out that they weren't much better. It just was not in the South. But my point is, I grew up thinking that, you know, the North wasn't the same, or blacks in the North, whatever, but that was not necessarily true. But my point is, the point I'm making is, when they would come home, they would come with the symbols, you know, to say, hey, I think that's what blacks are. I've made it, I'm a piece of the pie, I'm American now, I got this, I got that, I got the other. So you're gonna see it in the car, you're gonna see it in clothes, you're gonna see it in the jewelry, you're gonna see it in the, you know, the everything. So you had a lot of the blacks that went north, when they would come home to the family reunion or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, you ignorant black people, y'all still down here in the South, and we are different, whatever. So you've always had that divide and conquer. And some of that was going on between the free and the slaves, or the newly freed slaves. I think I saw here first amendment.
I hate to sound pessimistic, but I don't agree with that portion of what y'all are saying, because of the fact that, like, my family is educated on, like, land, and we have land, and we do certain things. I think it's really because of the fact that as a black community, we're the minority in America, so it makes it look like we aren't passing down anything, because we don't have many to pass it down to. And I think that it comes with, like, maybe having more workshops on, like, investing and things like that is how we could probably get more people aware of the different opportunities it is to make money and things like that.
But if I use Frederick Douglas' argument, you have those workshops, but they ain't coming.
Well, you gotta bring.
oh, he said they ain't coming.
There has to be some kind of incentive.
Right.
Like, if it's free food, then they coming, but you know.
Honestly, I see where both sides are coming from.
I mean, that has changed, you know, we are doing better, but it still is not. And you're right, because there's a lot of opportunities out there, a lot of stuff that people invest in that doesn't get to certain communities. That's where the responsibility does, in fact, fall on those who know. You have an obligation to take it back to those who don't know.
Right.
I remember a lady came here, you all met her, she came from the business group, she came a couple of times. But she was telling us of opportunities. She said, that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing it to the Fisk universities and the black schools, because you all don't know this information. The Vanderbilts and all these people, they know. So I think when you get your ear to the door and you know those opportunities, you do have an obligation. Now, again, to get the people to accept, you can't push something down people's throat. That's where the self-responsibility has come.
Like, I feel like I definitely see where you're coming from. It's kind of like I know in the black community, like, a lot of people, for one, we have, like, a whole class of us that's, like, you know, we basically, when we get paid, that money goes straightly towards bills and food. And then we have, like, a lot of us, like, where we have, like, in the middle class, where it's, like, you know, we have land, like, my family owns land, but then it's, like, there's some of us who, we have that capability, but we don't know we have it. So it's, like, for instance, I have a friend named Malik back at home, and he's making, like, about $20 an hour at a factory job. But it's like every time it's like he's still like, you know, he's blowing his money on like shoes every week. Like he got the newest pair up to date. And it's just like if he would have just saved his check, he could like easily like buy a house, rent that out, or he could like, it's like you said, we have to have a workshop, and then it's like also coming to like how can we get people to come. And I was gonna piggyback off what I think Professor Banjo was saying. It was like I remember reading, I think it was Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he said. It's like we're buying all this like fat flash stuff as like a way to kind of like buy back our freedom papers or something like that. kind of like we're trying to like symbolize that we own ourselves rather than actually owning ourselves, if that makes sense.
I mean, I don't know, I see both sides, but also I feel like with what you're saying, I feel like, a lot of times the select few who actually are educated well enough to go ahead and invest in properties, things of that nature, I feel like they're not glorified as much as the majority who say, look at materialistic things, who care for the civils, who care for things of that nature. So I just feel like a lot of times we can say, hey, there are select few, hey, there is that little percentage that does care and that are knowledgeable about investing and things like that, but in a sense, they're not glorified. And on top of that, the majority is seen as the ones who care about the materialistic things. But then also going back on the whole self, like individualistic aspect, my question is how much or how long are we supposed to be in that individualistic mentality, in that mindset for me? Because I feel like I do understand the whole self, what's the word, like the self part of that is more like you supposed to like take care of yourself, but then also I feel like that's the problem within our community nowadays. I feel like now, back in the day, it was more so let's take care of this village. I remember that whole saying, a village takes care of a child, and they raise a child. But now people have this individualistic mindset where it's like, well, this is my child, put in that example. How long are we supposed to be in that space where we're supposed to think that way? That's the question.
And speaking of, and I think that is a good point too, I think we do need a balance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't just do all individualistic, just me.
Right.
But you also just can't rely on other people too. But speaking back on the people wanna show me, just wanna be flashy, not actually have the money to back that up. I do think that is like a mentality in the Black community. I think part of it, I don't wanna be divisive, but I think part of it comes from like this whole hip hop community nowadays. Like, you see all these rappers, like, I mean, I watch the music videos, you see all these rappers flashing, you know, all their bling or whatever, you know, and then their nice cars and their nice houses, and talking about how much they have and all this, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that young boys or, you know, people growing up, or even like people in their adult years, they watch this and they're like, okay, like, you know, because people look up to them. And I think they are partially to blame, and I think people really need to, and I think that's what he was talking about when he was saying, like, pastors need to speak to their community about how to better themselves. And I do partially agree with that. I just don't think that there were enough opportunities at that time to do that. But, okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, you could go.
No, I was about to ask
Y'all
another
can sit down
question.
if you want to. We all come up here, feel free.
I was also gonna just say of what he was, that's kind of what, when you said about the, like, the rappers and stuff, I was kind of thinking about what he said about the pastor speaking the community. And sometimes it's kind of I feel like it's gonna be difficult as well to take the information from the pastors, because I'm not saying anything negative about pastors, but I feel like pastors fall in that line sometimes with the rappers as well. Because, I mean, they see you pulling up to the church house and you are in the Audi, and I'm also a church member and I'm pulling up in the Ford Taurus. So I just feel like it's just different levels to this stuff as well. But I don't really know, because you could also, I don't know, like, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but then I kind of don't agree. So it's kind of like it's like I got 50-50, because I think like having land and stuff is important. But I also understand what you were saying, how your friend like just be blowing his whole checks. Like, that used to be my mindset. Like, I used to blow all my checks. I don't care if I ain't have a dime. So, but I also just had to, as you get older, like, if you talk to him more, and then if he, you know, see like what your family doing, it all changes. But, you know, sometimes people don't, like, say, like, you see how you willing to tell us, but have you ever, like, told him to show him, like, you know, you can do this or you can do that? Like, I just feel like it's that way.
I think I want to piggyback off of what you're saying. The idea of us as a generation going, getting educated, getting these jobs that we as a younger person would have only imagined, oh, that's only for white people.
Mm-hmm.
And then being that symbol for younger generations, for your friend, seeing, okay, he did it. How did he do it? He got educated.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get educated, you see the opportunities that open up, but then that's also, it falls the responsibility of us to go back to our communities and show that these opportunities are open for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can be able to build ourselves as a community and say, okay, well, you know, instead of leaving bills for my children, I'm gonna leave trust funds, I'm gonna leave wills, so they can prosper, so then we can continue to grow as a community.
And I got one more, cause I'm a big Twitter person, so I had seen a tweet that said like, white elderly people leave their grandchildren $50,000 checks, while black children are buying their grandparents groceries. And that kind of made me like just think of the conversation, because I feel like it's just a gap somewhere that the black, like me, sometimes I feel like also like you can have when you have one foot in the door and one foot out the door, it's gonna be kind of hard to really close the gap, because you not really helping close the gap. And I feel like as I'm getting older, that's my problem, because I got 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door. And I also think like that's our generation, because I feel like we all know, like we all aware of the things that we should do, but like we still want to have the 1 foot in the door. Like I want to be flashy, but I want to save money. So I don't know, like it's all mental.
I think that the biggest thing with the black community when it comes to, like how we were talking about how we don't want to save, I think the thing is we, as a group or as a community, we never have any fear of consequence. We think that, you know, it can possibly happen that I'll be in debt, but at the end of the day, this is self-gratifying. So I'm going to spend the money that I have right now. Exactly, we're used to it, and then we're also okay with being in debt. We're okay with, you know, being in financial struggles and risking it all just for that look and just for the image and the title. So I think that when there's maybe a collective group of people that are dedicated to keeping their money and saving it and building on it and giving it back to their children and possibly being the models for that, possibly we can see change in our community as a whole. But like we also said, no one likes to be force fed anything either, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Last 2 minutes.
I was gonna say, I found the note of just force feeding or whatever. I think pretty much the only way you can force feed anybody anything is through the American school system, because they force feed people stuff all the time through that. So I really think that the only way to really make a difference wouldn't be targeting older people or people who are already grown and already have habits or whatever of how they spend money. But to just start with the younger generations, make it part of a curriculum, you know, so they have to learn it.
That's true.
One thing I would say is, I know like over the summer, I was a canvasser and I gave people the register to vote. And one thing I do realize with like our other classes that we've had in the past, like that voters mentality, the fact that they think that, oh, nothing's really gonna change, so then why should it start with me? I feel like that's also like thing too, because I kind of ran across that while looking at the register to vote. It was kind of like, well, I'm only that one person, how is that gonna change? What kind of change will I have on this particular thing? So I just think like overall, it's just kind of being complacent and being okay. But yet, in a sense, what I don't understand is, yet we can be complacent, but yet still complaining.
I'm skipping ahead, Colonel West has a word for him, I'm gonna give it to you right now, he talks about it, that everybody's a victim of it, and I'm alluding to where he says, people sit up and study people, I'm talking about money, people don't make a class issue now. People that have money and wanna make money, they sit up and they study people, and so they dangle stuff, okay, in a few days already, I don't remember Halloween being all it is today when I was a kid, but, my point is, those are market forces. They already got Halloween stuff up, and now we can't even get through October before they put Christmas stuff up. So they're sending you a message because they want your money. And so when you deal with people with a bruised ego that need these things, they don't spend all their money. They even offer, I had some colleagues here some years back, they were offering their kids, they were still in high school at that point, credit cards. Talking about debt. Don't have the money, but that's the quickest way to get it. Without money, and then you're gonna be looking at something, you know, a year down the road that you're like, oh my God, what have I done? So they make it easy for people, so it becomes a money thing, but I'm saying people do study people and set up, when you walk in the mall, they can fix it so it's pleasing to the eye and all of these things, and so you're like, oh, make you think you need these things, and so you go and you buy it. More so, everybody's a victim of that, white and black. But when you're dealing with the people that have this psyche that's messed up, it's gonna affect them a little bit more. And so, I mean, who do they show you? They put these women and men on these billboards and in the magazines and say, oh, this is beautiful, this is the way you're supposed to look, and we go buy it. Whether it's losing weight, right, that's a big market. If it's this, that, and the other, so again, people do study people, and they use it to their advantage and it works against whatever. But when you go to the communities as whatever, educated people, whatever you call it, don't be hurt if you're not received, because you're not gonna be received by everybody. And that goes back, people have to want what you are offering. But that doesn't say that you don't go and try. You're gonna hear that, those of you that go on to law school, you're gonna hear this all throughout, even when you graduate. You always give back, so you do have a responsibility, that's not a question. But how far does that go out? Because at some point, the people that you're trying to reach, they have to get on board also. So he raises some good points. I see some of those things could be put in a 21st century context. So deal with some of the same kinds of issues. But you see what I mean? He was making certain assumptions, maybe faulty, maybe not. That's your call. But he did make some kind of interesting, I think, on target points. Any other comments about him?
Can we go back to the idea of character?
Yeah.
Whenever I was reading, I was trying to figure out, because Douglas keeps saying you need to change your ways, but they can't strip your character. So to me, I kind of see that as contradictory. He wants you to change your ways, but he wants you to keep your character at the same time. Is he referring to the character of being oppressed and just continuously doing hard work without questioning it? Or different, or having a different perspective on it? Because he's talking about character, but at the same time he wants you to change your ways.
See, I don't know, but I do know that he was saying how basically black people need to go out and do their own hard work. So I think he was saying get into, like, building character by, like, having to work for it yourself instead of, because relying on white people. So I think that's the character he was talking about. I think the mindset was like something.
I think he's alluding to, first of all, he says, when he first began this thing, he said, there's a spirit of laziness, cowardness, and dependence. So to me, when he gets to the end and talk about character, he's saying, don't be these things. Work, have integrity, don't sit back and wait for somebody to do something before you get up and do it yourself. Comment. Is he putting too much burden on the blacks themselves? Is he blaming the victim? I don't know, I'm asking. These are just things I'm throwing out for thought purposes. Not necessarily the answer, but real quick.
Just in terms of, like, is he putting too much burden on people? Like she said, slaves wouldn't be able to read just because a lot of slaves couldn't read, so he's kind of directing this towards the free blacks, and I do feel like that is a burden on them, despite the fact that they are free and they do have more liberties than the enslaved blacks would. It's still a lot to go do the things he's saying to do, break free and whatever. Where at the time, the Civil War hasn't happened, nothing's happened, they're still enslaved, and there's still that looming threat that you could be put back in, and that's what, when I was reading it, that's what I was thinking of, like, you could still be put in jail or brought back, or, yeah.
Because even 2 years later, that was like the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, so it was just like.
Yeah.
There was, yeah.
I think that considering the time in which he was giving the speech, there probably were a lot of things that he probably wasn't considering. However, I think also a different perspective is that maybe this is just his projection for what he sees in the future. Maybe he didn't want it right then and right there. Maybe he was just saying, eventually this has to happen. And if that's the case, he's not wrong. I think there are a lot of things that should have been, especially at that time period, improved upon by the black community. So.
And I was saying earlier before class, I feel like this speech needs to happen maybe now,
Yeah.
or maybe in the next, 20 or so years, maybe a little while in the past, like around this time period. But for this time, I just think he's too far ahead of his time.
That's crazy though. Like how most of the speeches
Remember,
that we
Mr.
read,
Booker T,
it's just,
we can get it
we
started.
ain't got nowhere.
Booker T. Washington, look for, the convergences and, here's some similar things. Even when we talk about this guy, I can tell you, I can hear a little of Farrakhan in the 20th and 21st century.
I did, Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Compromise speech of 1895. Some things to know about the speech.
Tell me about him first,
About him.
backdrop, if you got it.
Yeah. Well, Booker T. Washington, he was born into slavery in Virginia in the mid 1850s, mid 1815s. In 1872, he left home and walked 500 miles to Hampton, Normal Agricultural Institute in Virginia. Along the way, he would take odd jobs to support himself. He advanced administrators to let him attend school and took a job as a janitor to help pay his tuition.
Did he have an admissions test, so to speak?
I didn't read about one. The school's founder and headmaster, General Samuel C. Armstrong, soon discovered him and offered him a scholarship because he saw that he was very hardworking and etc. This was to become his mentor. In 1881, the Alabama legislature approved $2,000 for a colored school, which would become the Tuskegee University today. At that time, it was Tuskegee Industrial Institute. General Armstrong was asked to recommend a white man to run the school, but instead he chose Booker T. Washington. Washington would go on to reassure whites that implementing a Tuskegee program would threaten white supremacy or pose any economic competition to whites. He taught that economic success for African Americans would take time, and that subordination to whites was a necessary evil until African Americans could prove that they were worthy of full economic and political rights. He believed that if African Americans worked hard and obtained financial independence and cultural advancement, they would eventually win acceptance and respect from the white community. And Washington, behind the scenes, he would finance different court cases that would challenge segregation. A little bit of a history on the Atlanta Compromise speech. It was given in 1895 at a Cotton States Exposition. This exposition and those of its nature were ways to get investors and visitors of the city to see new technology before radio and TV. Following the Civil War from 1861 to 1865, Atlanta's leadership of three of these cotton expositions. Atlanta's leaders hosted three of these cotton expositions in an effort to record and boost economic development. In 1895, the goal was to foster a trade between the southern states and South American nations. This exposition featured 6 states and special buildings featuring the accomplishments of women and African Americans, technology of transportation, manufacturing, mining, agriculture. These are things that Booker T. Washington believed in. The speech was given to a majority white audience. Booker T. Washington gave this speech in 1895, 1 year before Plessy versus Ferguson, where the court upheld the separate equal doctrine. The speech occurs 12 years, 1883, where the court ruled that the Civil Rights Act of 1875 was not constitutional under the 13th Amendment. This act, called the Enforcement Act, was a United States federal law enacted during the Reconstruction era that guaranteed African Americans equal treatment in public accommodations, public transportation, and prohibited exclusion from jury service. The court in this case established the state action doctrine, thereby allowing segregation and discrimination by private actors. The political climate at the time was extremely hostile towards blacks, and many whites were concerned about what they considered to be uppity blacks, such as Becky Du Bois. Without saying uppity blacks constituted those who were interested in going beyond field work and were interested in, becoming lawyers, doctors, basically jobs of high prestige. This is mostly because they were red. President at the time was Grover Cleveland, a Democrat. This is before the switch, who who went on record to say, though people support the government should not support the people. He voted a bill that would give $10,000 in seeds for, he vetoed a bill that would give $10,000 in seeds to Texas farmers after a crop failure. And given the conservatism and small government mentality, it can be reasoned that Grover was not going to be willing to do it because of black constituents at the time. Contemporaries of Booker T. Washington would be like W.B. Du Bois, who basically criticized Washington on not necessarily fighting as hard for civil rights. In The Souls of Black Folk, Du Bois stated, Mr. Washington represents an old attitude of adjustment and submission. His program practically accepts the alleged inferiority of the Negro races. Du Bois criticized Washington for not demanding equality for African Americans as granted by the 14th Amendment, and subsequently became an advocate for full equal rights in every realm of a person's life. As far as like a convergence goes, I would say he somewhat converges with Frederick Douglass, simply because they were both very keen on like, you know, the clear yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. They were very like, black people need to do for themselves for a time, and as far as like industry and agriculture goes. As far as the divergence, Du Bois and other activists at the time were very against what Booker T. Washington was preaching, simply because like they were very much says like blacks need to be advanced, but they need to fight for our rights now, whereas Booker T. was like stated that we need to accept this white oppression for now, and then go on and then like gain their acceptance through views. As far as the strength and weakness of the speech, there's only one, I guess, I
Of him,
consider.
not necessarily speech.
Of him? Oh, well, even him, even so, like, the only thing I can really think of is, he was very on, like, I guess, blacks, like, trying to capture at least some independence on the field, because in my mentality, I feel as though, like, if you can control your own food source, then that's, like, a huge step towards your own independence. However, the rest of, like, what he embodied as far as, like, you know, doing this in order to gain acceptance, and as far as doing this in order to, you know, as far as like shouldering this burden of like oppression simply because we, you know, want to gain acceptance in the future and not necessarily wanting to threaten the white supremacy culture, I definitely don't agree with him. His major thoughts and ideas, I took some quotes from the passage. He said, our greatest threat is that in the help from slavery to freedom, we may overlook